Okay, we're up to Chaf Dalid Amid Beis at the bottom, the Mishnah at the bottom. In Kairin, it's speaking of Chol Moed according to Moed Rishonim. In Kairin, v'loy cholzin, you don't rip kriya, you don't cholzin bear your shoulder by the levaya. They mevarin, and you don't have the sudas havra, the first meal in the street. El kroivim shalmeis, only the people who are mechayim misabel over the 7 relatives. It seems in other times that other people mishtatef in the avelos, at least in the levaya. However, when they do have this sudas havra, they have to turn over their bed and put it back in its upright position. Okay, mashma says the Gemara, va'afilu chacham, mashma afilu chacham, that you would not go ahead and be misabel on Chol Moed. V'tanya chacham shemes hakol kroivav, the chacham that dies, everyone is called a karev. Fred the Gemara hakol kroivav salket aitach. All of a sudden he dies and genetically you're all connected. El hakol kikroivav. Everyone by a chacham has a dinner kroivav, and therefore on Chol Moed everyone would be part of the avelis, about the ripping and being chelis the shoulder. Hakol karin alav, hakol chaytzin. Everyone does rips. Hakol chaytzin alav. Hakol marvin alav b'rachava, and everyone goes ahead and eats the sudavra on the street. Says so. L'chayra, the Mishnah has a kasha. You're telling me that mashmitz masha everybody, that everybody only the 7 avelim. But when it comes to a chacham, l'chaytz mashma everybody. Says Meinachanami is speaking the lav chacham who. The Mishnah is not speaking about a chacham. Our Mishnah that limits it to the Zayin Krayim is speaking about a regular guy. But Meinachanami is a chacham. We would extend these halachas to all of Klal Yisrael or people present there. The adam kashahu, and even an adam kasha. It's not kosher, meaning there's no shemetz of an avera. You didn't hear any shmuai, so you don't know anything about him. You be chayiv to rip. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea Simon Shin Mem Sivkat and Vav. This is dafka if yediyah b'shas yitzias neshama. Dafka if yediyah b'shas yitzias neshama, then you would be chayiv to rip. But that's not like that. The Tanya, if they ma bonav b'nois v'shalad mesim. Why do men lose their children when their children are young? They should go ahead and cry and be misabel over an adam kasha. Just to teach a person to go ahead and cry and be misabel, they're going to take away the gift, the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them. They took his iris, the children. Ella, that can't be. Ella, it means if they it's not that they die in order to teach you a lesson. It's since you were not misabel correctly on an adam chashav, one is punished by losing one of his children. And why did they die young? Anyone who cries in misabel adam kasha, listen to this. You get mechila for all your minus, right? B'shvil kavod she'asalei. The lav adam kasha who b'shvil kavod she'asalei. Stop. In other words, you see the chashivas of a human nefesh. You know, we get very used to it. But you hear a person hears about someone dying, a person hears about such a and realizes the loss and the sense of loss and what it means, the loss of a life, and especially you meet people who it's something that should affect all of us, and we should all be margish and be sensitive to that. Not unfortunately. I still remember during COVID the insensitivity that came about as a result of the constant people being nifted. It was like, oh, who died today? It was awful. It's awful. It's a malacha. People have to work on themselves to be sensitive to the loss of human life. The lav adam kasha who, what about a person who's not an adam kasha? Either kayhasim b'shas yitziyas neshama chiv v'mechayiv. If you did b'shas yitziyas neshama, you mechayiv. The Tanya, Reb Shimon Elazar Aimer, Aimer al ameis b'shas yitziyas neshama. Some was aimer by ameis at the time when the neshama leaves. Chayiv l'kroya is chayiv to go ahead and rip their clothing, right? Lama zed daimer the sefer Torah shenisraf. It's daimer to a sefer Torah that was burnt. So Rashi in Shabbos Daf Kuf Moed Beis. There's no person in Klal Yisrael that doesn't have a bunch of Torah mitzvahs. So therefore you be chayiv to rip on everybody. And Rashi, there's another shot. Rashi in the Ran says that since you can't learn Torah anymore, therefore it's like the Torah was burnt. So again, 2 pshatim. 1, since you can't learn Torah anymore, it's like you're burnt. 2, that the person who died was full of Torah mitzvahs. Nafkamina l'chayru would be if you go ahead and write kriya upon the death of a woman. If it's out, the person is not able to learn Torah anymore, you would not. If it's because they have Torah mitzvahs, then l'chayru you would. So l'chayra, why on a regular person? Why don't you rip kriya? Says a person even doesn't have a mitzvahs. You weren't there. We now begin a whole daf of hespedim of people dying and the hespedim that was said about the people, and some very, very unique agadata. The union of hesped seems to be it's a very important thing. It's brought down in Shin Mem Dalid or Shin Dalid Mem. They changed it around. That there's a chiyuv to be misabel. There's a chiyuv to be maspid, to make people cry, to make people feel. And if you're not maspid correctly, it seems to be a terrible avla, a terrible thing if you're not maspid correctly. One's even allowed to exaggerate a little bit when it comes to what. If you know the Taz brings down, if you know a person's about tzedakah, you're able to exaggerate how much tzedakah he gives, because we know if he was given the chance, he would give it. So it's not outright sheker. It's not outright sheker. The Taz seems to say it's a din of Haggadah to say this. You're being saying the right edus on a person. The Indian of Hesped is a very, very chashuv thing. So that's why we saw the Gemara yesterday. At what age do we make Hespedim? Aniyim, we were passing like Yehuda named Rabbi Shmuel. Aniyim 5, Ashirim 6. In other words, the Indian of it wasn't stop you say a hesped like we say hesped. No, it's the Indian of being maspid. In fact, they used to have professional maspidim, as we're going to see, that professionals who would do the job and pick out the kudus of a person. And I'll share with you today on one unbelievable hesped of Rameh Simcha and the Malbim. Bez Hashem, when we get to the right Gemara. Kinoach nafshei Rav Safra, when Safra was nifta. Again, we spoke at yesterday. Noach nafshei from that sefer of Shlomo ben Ayosim is like the person gets menuchas nefesh from this world. Now he's leaving this world and its travails. So like Rabban Allah, they didn't rip the clothing. They said, why? We didn't learn anything from him. Mashman, you only have to rip kriya on someone who you directly learn something from. Abaye told these chacham who did not rip the clothing on the death of Rav Safra. Mi Tanya harav shemes. It doesn't say a Rav that dies, your Rebbe. Chacham shemes, a chacham that died. The Tanya, the chacham that died. So he was a chacham. In addition, he's your Rebbe. How do I know he's your Rebbe? Because all day we're going to go ahead and we say over his Torah in the base medrash. So he is your Rebbe. So therefore, even if he wasn't your Rebbe, he's a chacham, and if he wasn't a chacham, he's your Rebbe. So what? You should write kriya. So they felt okay. It's a lost cause. It's too late. Abaye said, no, it's not a lost cause. Tanina chacham calls mancho oiskim behesped. The chacham, as long as they're being masped him, chayav l'kroya. There's a chiyav to rip. So Saval and Mikra Alta, he wanted to rip right away. Some Abaye, 1 second. Tanya chacham kvoidai behespedai. Only b'shas the hesped. Right now, they're not saying a hesped for him. Kvoidai is covered. It's in the hesped as we were masba, and therefore wait till the hesped itself. When you hear the hesped, then you could rip.
Wasn't he called Rav Safra because he was a scribe? He didn't say it over, but he was a scribe, and they used his Torah.
That's pshad that it was in the base medrash all the time. There's the Chasam Sofer. Look up the Chasam Sofer. You have Kedush Chasam Sofer. You can look it up on Hebrew books. There's a Chasam Sofer that speaks about his name. But I opted not to discuss it because I want to get into Rav Huna and this really weird, crazy situation. Says the Gemara. Kinuach nafshid Rav Huna. When Rav Huna was nifta, Sava lasuve Sefer Torah puria. They wanted to put a Sefer Torah on his bed, on the same bed that they were carrying him. They wanted to put a Sefer Torah. Amalu Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said, who Rav Chisda was the Talmud Muvik of Rav Huna. Milsa de bechayole svirle. The something that in his lifetime he did not hold from. Hashta leikim la'ovid leit. Now you're going to go ahead and do. Dam Rav tachlifa. I know chazinul Rav Huna. I saw Rav Huna. The boy lemeisav apurya. He wanted to sit down on a bed. But there was a sefer Torah on the bed. The kaf koda a'ara. He went ahead and overturned a barrel. For Isa sefer Torah lavei, and he put the sefer Torah top in the barrel. Alma kasav asal de'eshav gabe mitash sefer Torah merchala. When Rav Huna went to this extent to go ahead and do this, you see obviously that you're not supposed to sit on the same place as sefer Torah. So l'chayra what? You want to do that? So they opted again. If he didn't do it in his lifetime, in his death, they're not going to put the sefer Torah on the same bed that he's being carried. So having nothing puri mi baba. They weren't able to get the bed they were carrying him out. They weren't able to get it out of the door. It was too wide. So they wanted to take him out of the skylight. They could have got him out of. Samlu Rav Chisda, Hagamirna Minei, Chacham Kfoide Derech Pesach. The covenant of a Chacham is to go out the front door, to go out a door. So what do they want to do? Go take it from a if that bed couldn't fit, put him in a thinner bed that would go ahead, be able to go out the door. So Rav Chisda again said, we learn from Rav Huna himself, the Chacham is covered is the Mita Rishayna that he died on. Right? The Amar of Huna Amar Rav, Minayin l'Chacham shekfoide b'Mita Rishayna. How do you know the Chacham is covered as b'Mita Rishayna? Shnemar, it says, Vayakivu es Aron Elokim ala gola chadoshim. Right? So this to understand this raya, you have to go back a little bit in the Navi. The Pelishtim in battle had captured the Aron. It was in their hands for 7 months, and nothing good was happening to them as a result. They had to send it back. They built a new wagon. They put 2 cows. Matter of fact, they don't usually pull wagons. They put the Aron, and the Aron came to Beit Shemesh. Now, David, it would mean there, David is going to wants to bring it from the house of Abinadab. He wants to bring it to base David. He wants to bring it down. He's still using the same wagon. He's still using the same wagon that the Pelishtim sent it in. So you see, you're not supposed to go ahead and switch from one wagon to the next. But the Aron, so too we learn out from that you don't switch from one bed that the person died on to the other bed. That's the limit over here. Says the Gemara Vaita. So what did they do? Paras Baba, they broke open the door. They had no option. They made the door wider. Rafku, and they took him out. Pasach Rab Abba, and Abba spoke about Rav Huna. Roy Hoy Rabbeinu Shetishra Love Shkina. El Shebavel Garmalay. The Shkina was right to rest upon him, but he wasn't Bavel. Master Rav Nachman. Now, who said this, guys? Who said this? This is Rav Abba. So Master Rav Nachman Bar Chisda, right? So Rav Nachman Bar Chisda said, "V'imila Rav Chanan Bar Chisda, Hoya Dova Hashem El Yecheskel Ben Buzi Hakayin Be'eretz Kazdim." So either Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Chisda, or Rav Chanan, the son of Rav Chisda, said, "What do you mean that the Shekhinah wasn't roy to be Shoira on Rav Huna in Bavel? Yecheskel Ben Buzi was in Kazdim, that's Bavel, and the Shekhinah was Shoira upon him." So Tafach le'avu b'sandale. So Rav Chisda, hearing this, went ahead and did one or two things, different pshatim. Either he kicked Rav Chanan or Rav Nachman under the table and said, "Be quiet," or he took a shoe off, mamish hit him. And I'm alay, lava minulacha, did I not tell you, like titrit alma, don't be tired us with these questions. Ma hoya shahaya kvar. In other words, the reason when it says hoya kvar, since he had Nevuah already before in Eretz Yisrael, when he went to Bavel, he was able to have it even there. Masha'en Kain Rav Huna, who wasn't in Eretz Yisrael, therefore it wasn't right for the Shekhinah to be on him. So therefore it's not a question. Ki Askula Hasam, when they get to Eretz Yisrael, Amru Leil Rav Ami Rav Asi, they said to Rav Ami Rav Asi, Rav Huna Asi, Rav Huna is coming. Now, Rav Ami Rasi thought he was still alive. They thought he was still alive and he was coming. So Kiavino Hasam, so they said, when we were there in Bavel, Lehabila Ledule Reshamine, we couldn't pick up our heads in front of Rav Huna. Hashta Sinan Hacha Asa Basra, and now he's coming after us. In other words, Rasi, the great Rav Huna, they were scared of him in Bavel. Now they felt he was coming into them. We had a Gemara guys in Megillah, Daf Chav Beis. Afilu Ravami Ravasi that be Kohani Chashivi the Arad Yisrael, even though they were the Kahanim Chashivim in Eretz Yisrael, Meichif Kafi Lehul Rav Huna, they were subservient to Rav Huna. So the Gemara Megillah goes ahead and illuminates over here the esteem that Ravami Ravasi held Rav Huna in. Right, that says that even though the Chashiv and Kahanim Eretz Yisrael, they were machnif themselves to Rav Huna of Bavel. Now they're saying he's coming after us here now. So Amru, they said, no, Aroina boy, he's not alive. His Aron's coming. Again, they used to bury in Bavel, and they would go there to Israel. It's quite a trip. So Rav Ami Ravasi Nafik, they came out to greet the Aron. Rav Ila, Rav Chanina Loy Nafik, they did not come out. Ikad Ami, Rav Ila Nafik, Rav Ila came out, and Rav Chanina Loy Nafik, and Rav Chanina did not come out. It says, with nothing my time, but the ones who went out, what's the reason? The Tanya, Aron Oivim Makam Lamakam, an Aron that's going from place to place, Aindam Love Beshua, you should go ahead and have a roll for the proper proper covet. You say the bracha of Zavelim that he would like to say, and you'd have what? You'd have Nichem Avelim. The loy nafik my time, the people who didn't go out, why didn't they go out? The Tanya, they held, so since an Aron's going from place to place, it's not coming to the final resting place, they held that you don't have to go out. Kasha Hadadi, you have two brises going ahead and saying contradictory din. One says you go out, one says you don't go out. So it's kasha, not problematic at all. Kanshe shildu kayemes, kanshe shildu kayemes. It depends. Rashi always says if his guf is kayem, if the skeleton is intact, then you come out. If the skeleton's not intact, you don't come out. The Rambam says it means the shidra, it means the spine. You don't even need the whole skeleton intact. You need what? So again, if you're going from a long journey and the body's going to decompose, and so Chayra, for the Gemara, Rahuna Shilda Kayemes, who, right? Question: Rav Huna's body was intact, his shidra was intact, and nonetheless they didn't go out. It says, well, they didn't know. They didn't know that Rav Huna his body was intact. But had they known, they would have came out to greet him. Now, Omra Heichin and Nachya. This begins a crazy, crazy story. Mamish full of either it can be understood metaphorically or literally. We're going to take the literal approach. He says, Heichin and Nachya. Where Rav Huna? Where should we bury him? So Rav Huna Ribitz Torah Yisrael. Rav Huna was Rabbit's Torah Yisrael. Rashi brings Rav Huna had so many Talmidim, they would sit down, the dust from the Talmidim, when Mamish, the sky would go ahead and be filled up as a result of the clothing going up. Rav Chia Ribitz Torah Yisrael. Rav Chia was Marbit's Torah Yisrael. Haviman Mailile. So now they decided to put Rav Huna in the Ma'ara, in the cave of Rav Chia. They're going to bury him with the great Rav Chia. Good. So who's going to go in? I mean, they were scared to Pasha go into the cave of Rav Chia. So Amalu Rav Chaga said, Ano Malin Olei, I'll bring him in. The Ukmisil Talmude Kiavina Bar Tamne, sorry, Shana. I knew the Talmud when I was 18 years old. We knew Kol Kul at 18. Carry, and I didn't see carry. I didn't see, in other words, I was tar. This is a source people say that you ever hear by Levias, they said the only person who could touch the mace is the people who carry the mace, is the one who went to the mikvah. So sometimes you hear the people on Makbid, that the only one who can carry the mace to carry the mita is one who went to the mikvah. This is the source. You see, the Rav Chaga, he said, it's way for me to go in. After all, I didn't see carry. And I'll tell you, I was mashamish him, and I knew something that no one knows, that the Chayuma one day is hafchele with sur, that's tefillin, Rav Huna's tefillin, it turned around, machlokes whether it was the sur going down or the shell or the kesher in the back. For Yosef Allah arba tanisa, and he sat on it 40 tanesim. So he went in. Rav Chaga goes in, and what does he hear? Havigana Yehuda miyamina davua. Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Chia, was on his right. The Chizkiya mismoilin. Chizkiya was on his left. It's the Gemara in Samech Beis in Masechta Samech Hey Omid Beis in Masechta Yevamis, right? In Masechta Yevamis Samech Hey tells us that Yehuda and Chizkiya were twins, and it was a very, very Pelagic thing, because one was born 7 months in and one was born 9 months in. So the mother gave birth at 7 months and held the baby more for 9 months. It's sugya there where the women are allowed to go ahead and get sterile, because not mitzvah and pir v'rivya, right? So that's the sugya. We'll see that as Hashem. We have a few months to get to there, but so the Gemara, the yichus of Yehud and Chizkiya, they were the sons of Reb Chia, and they were both what? They were both twins and Pelagic twins. They weren't born minutes apart; they were born months apart. One a full term 7 and one a full term 9. It's a Pelagic thing. Okay, so they're lying by each other. Amalei. Now this is what Rav Chaga hears. Amalei Yehuda lechizkiya, says Rav Yehuda to Chizkiya. Now they're dead. Get up from your spot. The lav orich ara de koyim Rav Huna bahade. Right? It's not right for Yehuda to call that he should be here standing. Make room for him. Bahade de koyim, as he was getting up, kom bahade amuda de noira. A fire got up, and Chazi Rav Chaga, he saw it. Ivis, he got scared. Zakfei la'aroina, he just left the Aron, he stood up the Aron of Huna, the Nafik, and he went out. And V'nafik asa, v'haidla yonish, and that the Rav Chaga was not punished, is mishum the Zakfei la'aroina de Rav Huna, because he put up the Aron of Huna. So that's the metaphorically, there's many pshatim, but I have the Sefer, I told you, I have the Sefer, Rav Shalom min Ayasim. He takes it very literally. He says, listen what he says, Kom ba'dei, kom omid, kum b'duchtei. Now, how are they talking? He meant, how can a dead person say to another person? And how can he say, get up and move? So listen to the Lashon. Lefisha kol b'nei ha-Talmud, ki yeshenim heim v'lei mesim. All b'nei ha-Talmud, says the Shlomo ben Ayasim, they're considered sleeping and they're not dead. And therefore they will be able to get up and move. He brings as a raya the Gemara in Shabbos and Kuf Nun Beis. The Gemara in Shabbos in Kuf Nun Beis, we had a Maisa with people of Rav Nachman, they were digging. They get to a person, Rav Achoy bar Yeshiyahu, and he snorted at them. We had this Gemara in Shabbos, he snorted at them. And they got scared and they went. And Rav Nachman went and started speaking to him. And he told him he was born hundreds of years before. So he brings a raya from there that you see that tzaddikim are considered, when mesim, the yeshanim, the mamish, they're considered sleeping. So he literally takes this maisa literally. He says they could talk and they can move and within the keva, they can't move beyond the keva. That only b'shas techiyas mesim can they get out. But b'shas they're there. There are Gemaras that speak that shchenim speak in the keva, they speak to each other. I told you, Rav Gusman, my Rebbe's at Sal, keva is. Rebbe said he had one spot. He said it was a good spot, but it was next to a Hungarian. He said, "My Rebbe said Regnish Ungarish. He doesn't speak Ungarish, so he didn't have it next to that. So it's very, very, very. He took it very literally. Now there is a whole other recount of this in the Yerushalmi. In the Yerushalmi and Kalayim, in the ninth parak, Halacha Gimel, it goes through again. It comes and they pick it up. They're going to bury Rav Huna in the cave of Rav Chia, and they ask who should go in. And Rav Chaga says, "I'll go in." So you know what they told him? Ilo at boy the at gove ma gevar sab. You want to go in because you're an old man. And you'll go in there and you'll die, and therefore you'll warrant to be in the same ma'ara as what as Rav Chia and his sons. In other words, you're self-serving. You're only going there for your own thing. You're an old man, and you're going in there for your own reason. So he says, Amaloin, Rav Chia told him, Yavun mishichasa biragle, take a mishicha. Go ahead and take a rope and tie it to me. V'i anis, and if I'm delayed, asain garshin, you'll be able to pull me out. In other words, I want to show you that I'm l'shem shemayim. So like a Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur, they would put a rope to pull him out in case he died. So in other words, go ahead, attach a rope to me in case I'm there you think I'm there too long, then I'm not coming out, pull me out. And Reb Chia goes in and he finds Reb Chia is speaking to his sons. He said, Yehuda b'nei achrecha v'eino, there's no one like after you. Chizkiah b'nei achrecha v'eino, there's no one like you. So they had this whole conversation. And then finally it says, Rav Chaga, Rav Huna, Rav Huna said, I'm not roy to take their place. And Rav Huna decided nothing about sticking him up in fire. Simply, the question is whether Rav Huna was buried in another place or Rav Huna was buried in the cave, but not in the exact place that they made room for. And Rav Chaga came out, he was 80 years old, he was zocheh to live double to 160 as a result, showing it was L'Shem Shemayim. So Holy Yerushalmi brings a whole different play on exactly what transpired over here. Nonetheless, the greatness, the godless of Rav Huna, and also so many things of beyond the scope of our share of our basic understanding of what goes on in the world of the Mason. And so it's just, again, I think fascinating. It says the Gemara Vaita. Kinoach nafshe Rav Chisda was nifta. Savala suve sefer Torah puria. They want to put a sefer Torah on the meter that they were carrying him on. And again, remember, Rav Chisda is a Talmud Muvik of Rav Huna. Amalu Rav Yitzchak milsa del Rabbi le'sfirle, something that the Rebbe did not hold from. I'm not naked, never lay. We should do to him. Obviously, we saw in the previous Gemara, Rav Huna was not to sit on something that was what? Not to sit on something that was the Sefer Torah was on, right? So Sava, the Loila Mishla Karayu, they held not to go ahead and temporarily sew their rip. Okay, we're on Chaf Hey Amid Aleph at the bottom. Second line from the bottom of Chaf Hey Amid Aleph. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Ami, Chacham, Kimish Echziru Pnei Mechuri Amita Shoylim. A Chacham, since you turn your face away, a Chacham who turns his face away, immediately you go ahead and stitch up the temporary stitch. Kinoich Nafshe de Rabba Bar Huna, when Rabba Rav Huna was nifta, for Hamnuna, now Rabba Rav Huna, Rabba the son of Rav Huna, and Rav Hamnuna, they died. They seem to have died simultaneously, and they're being carried back to Eretz Yisrael. Askin Allah Hassam, they're bringing them up from Babel to Eretz Yisrael. Amid base, we're on the Amid base. Kimatu Agirsha Kama Gamle. When they got to a bridge, Kama Gamle, the camels they stopped. Pirish. The bridge was Gesher Tsar Moed. It was very, very wide, narrow. Only one lane. So only one camel could get through. So they stopped the covet. Who should go first? Rabbi Rav Huna or Rav Nuna? So Amalu Ahu Taya, there was this Arab merchant there. I don't know if he was leading the camels or he just happened to be there. My high, what's the traffic jam? So Amalei Rabbanon, the Avdi Yakara Adodi. It's Rabbanon, Rav Hamnuna, and Rabbi Rav Huna going ahead and showing cover to each other. Each one saying the other one should go first. So Mar Oma Nail Beresha. One says the other one should go first. Umar Oma Mar Nail Beresha. The other one says the other one should go first. So Omar, the Arab, gives a psak halacha. The Arab gives a psak halacha, and he says, Dino hu the Rabbi Rav Huna Leil Beresha. The din is that it makes sense that Rabbi should go first. Rabbi Rav Huna should go first. Cholav Gamle, the Rabbi Rav Huna went first, and not the Kiche V'Shine Dahu Tayah, the Arab lost his teeth. Now, so okay. There's a little words missing over here. There's a girsa. Listen to this girsa. The Arab said, "Dina Didi, Bedina Didi." In my din, Gavra Bar Gavra goes first. In my din, Gavra Bar Gavra goes first, meaning since Rav Huna, since Rabba was the son of Rav Huna, he was a Gavra Bar Gavra. His father was a Gavra. Anytime the Gemara mentions both the father and the son, is a raya that the father also was a Chacham. So therefore, since Rav Nuna doesn't mention his father, it makes sense the one who has the father and son, the son has a father who's a great Talmid Chacham, he should go first. But it's very meduyik. The Ben Yoyada says beautifully, Bedina Didi, doesn't say Bedin, doesn't say in logic. Bedina Didi, mashma in the laws of the Yishmaelim, in the laws of the Arabs, it goes first. Says the Ben Yoyada, because what's the yichus of the Arabs? Avram Avinu. The yichus of the Arabs is Avram Avinu. So Bedina Didi, in my din, right? Who should go first? The one who has the Muchastika father, the one who has Rav Huna as the father. So therefore, in my din, it should go first. Very nice b'nei yada. Why he lost his teeth, why he was punished. Okay, he shouldn't have opened his mouth. The Talmud of the Rabbi, it's, I don't know if it's mitzvah, they speak a lot about it. Why exactly? Again, it's a little Arab offering his opinion over here. I don't know. Now, there was comes now this, they're going to give Hespedim for Rabba Bar Huna and Rav Hamnuna. So came along this young child. Very often we find the Gemara, young children are Zoichet to Nevuah. They quote Psukim often. And it was a means of seeing after Nevuah was finished, they would ask a child, what pasuk did you learn today? It seemed to a way saying futuristic, right? We had it in the Gemara in Gittin with Leroy, and he became Baal Tshuva. If you remember that he went to destroy Yishlayim and he refused because of the pasuk that was quoted. So very often, Lacha Churban Abayas, Ladin Nevuah, El Shaitim L'Katanim, after Nevuah is Abayas, after the Churban, Nevuah was given only to the Shaitim, the fools, and the Katanim. So it seems Katanim had some sort of connection in their purity to Hashem. So here we have it says a young fellow, who seemed to, I don't know, they asked him to, but he offered a hesped on Rav Hamnuna and Rav Huna. What did he say? Geza Yeshishem Ola Bavel. A Geza was cut off. Yeshishem from Bavel. So Geza Yeshishem, I wrote down over here. That Zera Gedolim v'Chachamim, the seed of Gedolim v'Chachamim, they were cut off, and they came up. Olami Bavel, they came from Bavel. The Imai Sefer Melchames, they have with him the Torah. The Sefer Melchames is called Melchames Hashem is Torah. Ka'as v'Kipud Huchbaloi. They went ahead and they put together Ka'as v'Kipud. Ka'as v'Kipud seem to be birds that they hang around the Churban. They hang around with things that are Churban. So over here, the Churban that they died. So it's a calamity that they died. Lirois b'shor v'shevra haba, to watch what the destruction that happened in Bavel, Shinner's Bavel, of these two great Talmidei Chachamim. Chatzaf al Omar, Kadosh Baruch Hu became angry and he took them away. V'chomas mimenu nefasha, he took these guys away. V'samach behem kekala chadasha, however, Kadosh Baruch Hu is happy like a kala because he's getting these two great Talmidei Chachamim in Shemayim. Roichiv aravai sas v'sameach, one who rides the aravai sas v'sameach. The Gemara in Pesachim tells us there's 7 Rekiyas. The highest Rekiya, guys, is aravais. That's the highest Rekiya. So Roichiv aravais, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol the Kisya covered resides in the highest Rekiya, and so will Rav Hamnuna and Rabbi Rav Huna. But boy, I love nefesh nachi v'tzadik. When this nefesh nothing v'tzadik ascends up to them. Kinoyach nafshe Ravina, when Ravina was nifta, pasach aleahu saftana, there was a saftan who said, Timorim hanio roish, Timorim, wave your tops. The Talmud Chacham is compared to a tamar. Rashi in Ksav Yad says, we know that just like the hearts of palm, the palm tree has one heart in it that goes up, and therefore, so too, Shein le'leiv echad el v'nishu shemayim, they only had their lay was 2 Avinu Sheva Shemayim. So the comparison of the Talmud Ravina, whose lay was totally like the heart of a palm tree, that only have one lay. There was no other mindset except that Kadosh Baruch Hu. And now it says, Tzadik Hatamach, Nasim Leilos Kiyamim, go ahead, let's go ahead and Mamish make Makana day and night, Al Mesim Leilos Kiyamim, on those people who made their nights like days. In other words, Ravina, he went ahead and he would learn day and night. Ravina, he would go ahead and he would learn day and night. So too, we should go ahead and be Makonain day and night. So there's a big kasha over here. Ravina is the only person who learned night and day. I mean, in order to be anything in learning, you have to mamish give up your life. I always tell over the story. One of the greatest gedolim we had in the last 150 years was Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin. Shua Leib Diskin was the Rav in Brisk. He went there to Yisrael, and he was the Rav of Yerushalayim at the time. He was nifter in 1896. So my friend Hillel Ravel was once reading a book that described his life, and it said Rabbi Shua Leib did not sleep during the week. He would only sleep on Shabbos. He didn't sleep during the week. He would only sleep on Shabbos. Maybe we chap a dremel here and then the Beis Medrash. And he was so nispoiled, he sold it to Rosh Hashiva. And Rosh Hashiva, he shrugged his shoulders. Rav Hillel said the Rosh Hashiva is nispoiled. So he goes, when I was Rav Shimon, we did that also. He goes, when I was Rav Shimon, we did that also. And Rosh Hashiva was nifta in 1990, guys. I mean, that's the way Torah is kind of. So l'chayra, what's the big hesped over Ravina? He's the only one who would learn day and night. I mean, the Vilna Gaon slept in 3 half-hour shifts, an hour and a half. 1 half hour. That's what he did. Al-pi science, it's not possible. Torah is above Teva. Kadosh Baruch Hu is Kavi al Hashem Yachfifu Koyach. Those who place the pasuk in Yeshaya, Kavi Hashem Yachfifu Koyach. You put the Koyach in Hashem, and I'll give you a renewed strength. So again, it's amazing they were able to rise above the nature. So the question is, what's the big hesped over here? So I found Shuli Bornstein spoke this out, but I found it in the Mesifta, the hesped that Rav Meir Simcha said on the Malbim. A hesped that Rav Meir Simcha said in the Malbim, whole different interpretation of what? Of day and night. Now here's the question. Moshe Rabbeinu is Al Lamarim. Moshe Rabbeinu goes above. And we know Moshe Rabbeinu stayed there for how long? 40 days and 40 nights. How did Moshe Rabbeinu know the difference day and night? He wasn't eating. There wasn't like nighttime and day. You're in Shemayim. There's no daytime. There's no nighttime. How is he able to tell the difference? So I share with you the words of Rav Meir Simcha's hesped on the Malbim. The Chedusha Rabbi Simcha Chelik Beis Simenon Hey Oisvav Bir Lefi Amavur BeMedrash Shaychatav Tehillim Yotes Shekshaya Moshe Loimei Torah Shebechsav. When Moshe would learn Chumash, Yada Shu Yom, he would know it's daytime. Ukeshel Loimid Torah Shel Bal and he would learn Torah Shel Bal Yada Shu Laila, he would know it's nighttime. Harishinyan Torah Shel Bal Hu Laila. Torah Shel Bal is vague, it's dark. Ulafisha Ravina of Ravashi Sidru Shas. Ravina and Ravashi, they were the ones who put together the Shas. Lakach Nichra Some Leilos Kiyamim. They are the ones who made night like day. Shahafich Torah Shel Bal Shemisrasa Kelaila Ledavar Behir Bayoim. Guys, if it was only before the Torah Shel Bal we wouldn't know anything, right? We wouldn't have any clarity. It's so dark. Ravina Ravashi through the Gemara illuminated the Mishnah, illuminated the Torah Shel Bal and it taught it to us. They made what was dark light. So according to this is exactly what the Hesped on Ravina was. Not that he learned Torah day and night, but he, by going ahead and being Masad the Gemara and give us the clarity that we would have been lost in, by giving us the clarity of Torah and made the Torah Shel Bal Torah Shel as if it's Torah Shel Sav. And that's the beautiful hesber of the Hesped or Ramei Simcha and the Malbim, because the Malbim did the same thing. Those who've learned the Malbim synthesized the Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shel Peh, as did Ramei Simcha, by the way, in the Meshech Chachma. If you look in the Meshech Chachma of all the Svarim, he brought the Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shel Peh together, a beautiful hesped for Ramei Simcha on the Malbim, and the fact that Ramei Simcha was Mekayim himself in his beautiful sefer, the Meshech Chachma. Okay, fantastic interpretation based upon the Mesifta that I saw. Okay. More Hespedim, right? More Hespedim. Now, it seemed to be they would have these professional maspidim, guys. They'd have these professional maspidim, guys who you'd hire and they would be maspid. So Amalu Ravashi wanted to know the Hesped they're saying to him. So Amalei Ravashi Labar Kipuk, he was who you my day comes, what are they going to say about me? Amalei Amina in Barozim Nafla Shal Hebes. If in the cedar trees comes a fire falls, Mayasu Ezube Kier. What's going to happen to what? To the grass growing out of the walls. Levyosan Bechako Haola. If they capture the Levyosan, the great Levanthian, the great Levyosan on a hook, Mayasu Dogi Rakak. What a regular fish is supposed to say. The Nachal Shoitif Nafla Chako, and the stream gets dry. Mayasu may gave him what's going to happen to the small waters. So in other words, basically, your greatness, that what's going to happen to you. Amallah Barovin and others, there was a person Barovin who was also seemed to be a eulogizer, and he said, Chas v'shalom the chaka v'shal heves b'tzadiki amina. You go ahead and compare him to a fish hook or a flame. Or ma'amitz. So Bar Kipuk said to Ravavin, what would you say about him? So Amina, I would say, Bochul avelim, go cry, v'loy la'avedav nafubat, but nafa, the one who was lost, shehilim nucha, because he's in the right place. But cry what we should sorry for losing what we are lost. Cholish Daiter Alaya Rav Ashi felt bad. He didn't have Chalishas Adas from his Hespedim. The Sefer of Shalom ben Yosem, I saw, he says that they shouldn't have said your eulogy. You should give him a bracha. No matter what they would have said, it was not good. They should have given a bracha. They should live many years. And anyway, so what happened to these people? It seems that their feet became turned over. And therefore they didn't come to, and the day when Rav Ashi died, they weren't able to walk because their feet, in other words, like Shem made that their feet were turned over. And therefore, Rav Ashi said, it seems to be a play on words. Not only could they bear the shoulders, but they couldn't do chalitza. Since their feet were chalitza, you take off the shoe. Since their feet were inverted. It's very funny. I just came to mind a very funny story of Ramei Simcha about a eulogy. Ramei Simcha, the Vinsk was in Latvia, and in World War I, there was a major battle in the Vinsk between the Russians and the Germans. There was a major battle there. And Ramei Simcha, all the people fled the city. Ramei Simcha said, as long as there's a minion, I'm staying. Ramei Simcha stayed in the city. And people had heard that he had been killed. They heard that Ramei Simcha had been killed in Vinsk. So they made Hespedim for him. Unfortunately for them, he was alive. After they found out he was alive, they had published Hespedim. Rabbi Simcha was reading over the Spade and they said about him, and he said, "On Eric gesagt say you good." He said, "This guy said very good." So it's very funny how it fits in with the whole. It fits in the flow of the Gemara. Rabbi Simcha's, hesped for the Malbim, and now Rav Ashi's hesped, what they're going to say about him. In fact, Rabbi Simcha got to see what they got to say about him. I tell you, I always say over. My Rabbi was giving shir. My Rabbi was fakishiv Rabbi Simcha. He was bewitched. He couldn't put down. He went through. He told me when the Or Sameach came out. Rabbi Simcha wrote two svarim that he's known for. The Or Sameach, the Meshech Chachma. He said when the Or Sameach came out, he says, "Leiza." He goes, "I have lent the safe in 10 days. I went through the safe in 10 days." He said, "Azovi a bestseller." He said, "Azovi a bestseller." Just like you read a bestseller, he said he couldn't put it down. He couldn't put it down. And Rav Chaim Moshe would have the Meshech Chachma every Shabbos. He would go through the Meshech Chachma. It was just an unbelievable. They say that the last person who knew Kol Torah Kula really was Ramei Simcha. They said last person. I don't know what that means. They say. Who says? I'm just telling what I heard. That the last person they say over who knew Kol Torah Kula was Ramei Simcha. He's coming up to his 100th yard site. He was nifter in 1926. He's nifter in 1926. You have another few years to the yard site of Ramei Simcha, and I was zeicha to be at his kever. I was zeicha to go to the Vince to be his kever with the minyan on his yard site and say Kaddish. Certainly one of the highlights of my life. Says the Gemara Vaita. Rabba kihavi asal degeles. Rabbi the Degeles is the Tigris River. When he came there, Amalei lebarovin. He said to this, speaking about Barovin, this hespeda, kum emi mosa, get up and give. It seems to be that, forget a hesped, he wanted him to daven, give him a nusachat tefillah. It seemed to be that the people who were able to eulogize, they had a koyach of dibur, so they were able to say right words. So he wanted a tefillah. Rava wanted a tefillah of him that he should go over the river. I guess it was dangerous to go over. So Koiv Omar Rava got up and said, "Bo roiv shlishim b'mayim." The roiv of the third should enter the water. Socha v'rachim. Remember, have rachmanis. Ta'inu me'acharecha ki'ishim b'lecha. We have gone away. The shlishis represents Klal Yisrael. It goes, we moved away like a wife goes away from a husband. Al tasnichenu ka'ois meimara. Nonetheless, don't leave us like what? Like the meimara, like Anisha Saita. Now we have a bunch of eulogies coming up. Chanin, Yochanan, Zera, Abba, Yaakov, Yosi, Shmuel, Chia, Menachem, Simon. Okay, Rav Chanin, Chasnei de Ben Nasiav. Rav Chanin was the son-in-law of the Nasi, and Leiko Havile B'nei. He didn't have any children. Boy Rachmei, Rav Chanin, Davin, Vahavile, and he finally had a child. On that day, that child was born. Noach Nafshir. Rav Chanin passed away. It's unbelievable. Pasach Le'ahu Psavdana, Simcha L'Soiga Nepcha. Simcha, the same Simcha L'Toiga to sadness has turned. Sasan V'Yagin Nevaku. Sasan V'Simcha. You have the Sasan V'Yagin is clinging to Yagin to distress. Ve'esh Simchasei Nenach. Ve'esh Chaninasei Aved Chanina. And that to play on words, at the time of the chain of the child was born, we lost Chanina. So Iskele Chanan al Shmei, they called him Chanan. His name was Chanan ben Chanan. My friend Shalom Palak's father was Baruch ben Baruch, right? My friend was Baruch ben Baruch. His father died. Kinorach Nafshid Rabbi Yochanan Pasach le Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar. He said the following: Hesped Kasha Yom Yisrael. The death of Rabbi Yochanan is Kasha Yisrael Kiyom Shemesh B'Tzarayim. It's the day the sun sits still. Dichsiv v'hoya b'yom ahu v'beisi Hashemesh B'Tzarayim. The Omar Rabbi Yochanan Zeh Yom Shel Yoshiyahu. This is the hesped they said in Yoshiyahu Amelech. Kinuch Nashid Rabbi Yochanan, when he passed away, Yosef Rav Amish Shiva Shleishim Rav Ami sat. He didn't have to, but he sat. Rav Ami said, "Talmud Rabbi Yochanan." He sat 7:30. Amar Rav Abba Brei Rav Chia Bar Abba Rav Ami Da'av L'Gami Da'av. He did it his own. That's not the Psak Halacha. He did it according to his own rules. The Hachi Amar Rav Chia Bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. In the name of Rabbi Yochanan, who was died, Afilu Rabbi Shalim the Chachma. Even the Rebbe who went ahead to Chachma and the Yosef Lov El Yomecha. You only sit one day, not 7:30. Kinuch Nafshid Rav Zera. And Zera was nifta. Pasach Le'ahu Savdana. They had professional Savdana said Eretz Shina Harav Yolda. Eretz Shina. They gave birth to Rav Zera. Eretz Tzvi Gidla Shashua. But again, Rav Zera went there. He ran away. He went there to Yisrael, and that's where what he was Shashua. He was raised. Oy la Amurakas. Lo says Rakas Tveria. He of the Kli Chemdasa because they lost what their precious Kli. Kinuch Nafshid Rav Avo. Achdi Amude, the Kesari Maya, the waters of the waters of the Amudim of Caesarea, they shed water. The Rabbi Yossi, when Rabbi Yossi passed away, Shafku Marzove de Tzipuri Dama, the goddess of Matsuri, they had blood coming out of them. Look at the top places. Shafa Marzav Tzipuri Dama, the Farish Yerushalmi, the Yov Nafshe Al Gezei Rasam, because he was good. Rabbi Yossi was Moshe Nefesh and the Gezeiris of the people at the time. Nishbach Dami Al Yichud Hashem Tosefta Pirishache Shenasa Nafshe Al Amila. Of course, in the first Peshat, he was Moshe Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. According to the second shot, that he was being makbid on Mila, that Mila should go on. Again, the Romans, they made gezeres that we shouldn't have Mila. So therefore, that dafka, they sprouted blood to be meramis to his greatness, that he was Moshe Nefesh for this great mitzvah. The Rav Yaakov, when Rav Yaakov went ahead and was nefta, is Chamisu Koichavi B'Yamama, the stars, you could see them during the day. The Ravasi, when Ravasi was nefta, Akru Kolilana, all the trees were uprooted. Again, this pshatim and all these things. Why dafka these things happen for these people? The Rabchia, the Chisu Kipe the Nura Markia, they saw from Shemayim came down stones that were burning. The Reb Menachem, Reb Simoy, Reb Menachem, Reb Simoy changed the Gersa. Ishtu Salmoni Vahavi Lemechatzila. He said that right, this one is pretty good. We know this one. He was considered a chassid. In Hilchas, he would never even look at a coin. At this again, the slem that was printed on the coin, he was such a chassid when it came to, you're not supposed to look at getchkas and different things. He wouldn't even look at a coin that had a mint on its side, that had a slem on the side. So ishtoi salmone, what happened was the images that were on the coin, they became flattened, they became like a slab. The Tanchum Barchia is Katsru Kol Andarta. They had the kings, they had all these images of the kings, and they were cut down. The Rebbe Eliashiv is Chamru Shivin Machtra Ben Ardois. They used to go ahead and they used to have tunnels, and the Ganovim used the tunnels. And when he passed away, I guess they caved it, or it became revealed. I'm not sure. Let me see how Rashi learned this. The Ganovim v'schusei lehavi asu Ganovim. I guess they were closed up, and the schus and the Ganovim couldn't go ahead and use them. The Rav Nuna, when Rav Nuna was nifta, we mentioned earlier. The chisu kipe the ardam erkia, the hail coming down from Shemayim. The Rabbi Rav Yossi was nifta. Nosha kipe difras adadi. The pras is the river, and there was it seemed to be that the arch of the river came into Shada, the Baiva Rava, when they were nifta. Nachish Kife, the Diglas Adadi, the bridge that went over the Tigris River, they seemed to go ahead and touch each other. And finally, Kinach Nafshe, the Rav Meshashia, Toyin Dikle Shitse, the palm trees grew thorns. And this reason for all these things, these great people and the Indian of the Hesped, and you see that these things weren't Hespedim. We see that what occurrences happen as a result, different things happen as a result of the Patir of a Tzaddik. Everyone should have a great day. Thank you for listening.